Let's clear up some misconceptions about cortisol. Social media has presented a very negative image about cortisol. It really is a buzzword nowadays. No, you cannot regulate your cortisol levels by simply drinking some type of a drink called an adrenal cocktail every single day. Yes, it can be helpful, but no, that's not going to be the savior for your cortisol problems. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shazeen and I'm a nutritionist specializing in PCOS. As you can guess, in this video we are going to be talking about PCOS and cortisol connection. We are going to be talking about why cortisol is actually important, and it's not a bad hormone, it's only bad when it's imbalanced. So with that, we're going to be talking about why it's important to worry about cortisol being balanced rather than just worrying about high cortisol levels. And I'm going to be going over some of the key symptoms that you want to look out for when worrying about cortisol imbalances with PCOS. This is a two-part video, so in this video I'll be talking all about cortisol and the symptoms you want to look out for, and in the second part I will be talking all about simple habits and dietary changes that you can make to start improving cortisol balance inside your body. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone. It is a stress hormone. It's released by our adrenal glands, which are two tiny glands located on top of the kidneys. You want to think of cortisol as our body's internal alarm system. When you are under any kind of stress, your adrenal glands release cortisol. Now, by stress, I mean any activity. So when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol levels actually peak so that you can wake up. And that's actually really important. That's called the cortisol awakening response. When you are exercising, then cortisol is released. When you are working on an important project, cortisol is being released. So as you can tell, cortisol is very important. It helps us to keep energized, it helps us to wake up in the morning, and it helps us to maintain that energy level throughout the day. Because throughout the day, we actually have a pattern in which cortisol is released. So at the beginning in the morning, when you wake up, cortisol needs to peak. Like I said, that's your cortisol awakening response. And then slowly, as you go throughout the day, it slowly decreases. And at night, it completely decreases so that your sleep hormone melatonin can be released, and then you feel sleepy, and then you go to sleep. Cortisol also helps to manage inflammation. It's really important for controlling inflammation. So for instance, you get sick, you have any kind of injury, obviously your body has an inflammatory response. So your body sends out all the inflammatory molecules to heal you so that you feel better soon. And cortisol actually steps in to avoid this inflammatory response from going crazy. It kind of controls the inflammatory response so that you are healed and the inflammatory response turns off. And this prevents excessive swelling, pain, and any kind of damage. So this is all when cortisol is balanced. However, when you are in a state of prolonged stress, which could be coming in from any direction, and this is where I want to clarify that stress is not just mental stress. Stress is if you're on a blood sugar roller coaster, so you're not managing your blood sugar levels. If you are dieting too much, stress is if you're not getting enough sleep. That's also stress. And of course, stress is also our emotional stress, which could be coming in from relationships, it could be coming in from starting a new job, maybe even changing a new country. So stress comes in all different forms. Now here, I want to talk to you about a fight or flight response. Hundreds of years ago, our ancestors actually needed a very hyperactive stress response because they had to run away from predators, they had to run away from each other when they were trying to kill each other, because in that day and age, they needed cortisol for survival. So we needed this hyperactive stress response so that their muscles can immediately be supplied with the energy so they can run away. They needed cortisol levels to be high so that they can stay alert, so they're not sleepy, they're not fatigued. So in that case, that was really important. Now, this same kind of response in today's age is actually very dangerous because, like I said, stress in today's world is different. It's completely different to the way it was before. So that means if we are getting this rise in blood sugar levels from high cortisol levels, then that blood sugar is not being used up by our muscles. That blood sugar is actually just staying high. We're sitting down, we're stressed, and that obviously causes inflammation. As you can tell, in today's modern world, stress isn't just about a life and death situation. Stress is so many things. Stress is when you are scrolling through your phone and you read upsetting news, which happens a lot nowadays. Stress is when you're overexercising, that I mentioned before. Stress is constant digital overload. So you're just scrolling and scrolling on your phone, even if you're watching different kinds of content. Some is funny, some is sad, some is making you, switch on your brain for some critical thinking. If you're doing that constantly, that's stress. Stress is blue light exposure past sunset. Stress also is poor sleep habits, so you staying up late, waking up early, or going to sleep at odd hours of the night. So stress is all those things, and as you can tell, stress is different to that it was hundreds of years ago. Now, what these stressors do is that they keep our body in a constant state of prolonged stress, and that means that cortisol is being released in a prolonged state. And when that happens, this is where the real problem begins. Obviously, with PCOS, we actually tend to be more sensitive to stress. I'm sure you know about the link between PCOS and trauma. So if you've gone through any kind of trauma in the past, then you are more prone to having more severe PCOS symptoms. I have spoken to women across the world, and they talk about how sudden life changes, such as changing jobs, getting into a new relationship, breaking up in a relationship, also changing homes, changing cities. All those things have acted like stressors for them, where they might not even have known they had PCOS until they went through these stressful situations, and then they started to have symptom flare-ups, and then they went to the doctor and they were diagnosed with PCOS. So stress is a really big factor that comes into play in the manifestation of our symptoms. Stress is linked to bloating, joint pain. It is linked to your energy levels being down throughout the day. So all of those symptoms are a result of prolonged stress, are a result of an imbalanced cortisol response, where our cortisol levels aren't being released in the pattern that they should be released throughout the day. So we're having high cortisol when we should have low cortisol, we're having low cortisol when we should have high cortisol, and so on. So what key symptoms of cortisol imbalances do we want to look out for with PCOS so that we know that our body is giving these warning signals and we need to do something? One of the biggest ones is when you are sleepy throughout the day. So you wake up in the morning and instead of feeling energized for the day, you feel sleepy and tired, and you tend to feel that throughout the day. But when it comes to nighttime, you suddenly feel this burst of energy and then you can't go to sleep, and it doesn't really make any sense. And the reason for that is because of our cortisol pattern being disturbed, where it's low in the morning when it should be high, and it's high at night when it should be low, so that our sleep hormone cannot be released appropriately. The next symptom I'm going to be talking about is one that I know many of you might be frustrated with, and also this was something that I was frustrated with at one point, and that is a protruding belly, but you have lean arms and legs, and you might even have a lean face, but you have this belly that kind of sticks out. And the reason for that is during times of stress, when we have cortisol being released excessively, our body actually prioritizes fat storage in our stomach area, and that is considered to have a protective effect. Because remember, our body is trying to survive. It thinks we are going through a situation where it's a life and death situation, and to do that it's thinking, well, we might not have food available, so let's store fat for a rainy day. And linked to that is we have higher cravings of sugary and salty foods, because our body just wants to load up on fuel for survival. And then coupled with that, the next symptom is fatigue. And this is not your normal kind of fatigue. This is debilitating fatigue. And women with PCOS tend to find this is even worse, because we already are struggling with fatigue, with insulin resistance. And then when cortisol imbalances come into play, this fatigue is just worsened. Like I said, cortisol is our wake-up hormone. And obviously when we have cortisol imbalances, this is not happening. That means we are just fatigued throughout the day. This interferes with your circadian rhythm, which is your sleep-wake cycle, and that makes you have absolutely no energy throughout the day. And linked to that fatigue is mental fatigue, because when we have cortisol imbalances, we have brain fog. And when we have brain fog, we have to think harder to complete the tasks that we have to do during the day, whether it's housework, whether it's at work, whether it's at school or university. That means that our brains just have to work harder. And to have that extra focus, we just tend to have this mental fatigue as well. and this just leads to mental exhaustion. So these are the key symptoms that I want you to think about. Do I have this debilitating fatigue that's not normal, that doesn't get better? Am I really sleepy in the morning and awake at night? Does my fat storage primarily occur in my belly region, and that weight is really stubborn to budge? So I want you to think about that and the information that I provided in this video, and I'll see you in my next video where I'll be talking all about what you can do, easy habits that you can establish to improve this issue and improve your cortisol levels. So stay tuned for that.